The Indian Air Force wants an unmanned strike fleet big enough to fight a two-front war. Reports now suggest that that number could go up to 500 combat drones, stealth drones, drones that fly into enemy airspace so that pilots do not have to. This is India quietly building a machine army in the sky meant to fly along the Rafale, the Tejas and the Su-30MKI. But the program is still years from service. The funding still needs final sign off, and the flight tests are still pending. So, how real is this 500 number? How soon can India actually field it? And is the country's industrial base ready to build a fleet this size? The Indian Air Force is planning one of the world's largest stealth combat drone fleets. According to reports, the IAF is studying a force of 350 to 500 Ghatak unmanned combat aerial vehicles supported by HAL's combat air teaming system, including CATS Warrior and ALFA-S drones. The objective is clear: every frontline fighter should eventually operate with unmanned partners instead of flying solo. Now, this is a serious number for an unmanned combat fleet, but it needs context. This is not one drone program, it's three, layered on top of each other, and each one is at a different stage of readiness today. Instead of risking pilots on the most dangerous missions, stealth drones would penetrate heavily defended airspace first. That would destroy radars, suppress enemy air defenses, strike high-value targets, and gather intelligence before manned fighters move in. Around the world, air forces are moving towards manned-unmanned teaming. India now wants to become part of that club. At the top of that stack sits Ghatak, formerly called Project Aura, built by DRDO, India's defense research body. Ghatak is actually a flying wing, no tails, 13 tons in weight, an internal weapons bay that can carry 1.5 tons of munitions. Its job is deep strikes, taking down enemy air defenses and recon in the most heavily guarded airspace. In March this year, India's Defence Acquisition Council cleared a budget of 39,000 crore rupees to acquire 60 of this under the Remote Piloted Strike Aircraft program. But here's the catch. Final approval still needs the Cabinet Committee on Security to sign off, so the money isn't locked in just yet. And the timeline is long. Officials are talking 7 to 8 years before Ghatak enters actual service. It runs on a dry version of the Kaveri engine, no afterburner, built specifically to cut down its heat signature. The airframe will be almost entirely carbon composite, 80 to 90% of it, to keep the radar cross-section low. This is India's marquee stealth drone, but it is still a demonstrator program bearing a production budget. Below Ghatak sits a lighter aircraft, the CATS Warrior, that's built by HAL again. This one is designed to fly next to a piloted jet, not instead of one. 2.2 tons, 9 meters long, powered by two modified turbojet engines cruising at Mach 0.6, capable of pushing to Mach 0.9 with a range of 350 kilometers. Now, the Air Force wants around 100 of these. Its job is to fly ahead of Rafales and Tejas jets, carry smart anti-airfield weapons, take on the electronic warfare and recon load, and let the human pilot in the cockpit stay out of the most dangerous airspace. First flight is now expected in 2027, later than originally planned, but getting there. Layer 3 is even smaller, a pod called ALFA-S, built by HAL and New Space Research and Technologies. A modified Jaguar, Tejas or Su-30MKI can launch this pod from safe distance. It glides for around 100 kilometers, then releases up to 24 small drones, each carrying a 5 to 8 kilogram warhead. Their job is to swarm and overwhelm radars, missile batteries, and systems like the S-400, forcing an enemy to waste expensive interceptors on cheap targets. China already fields hundreds of fifth generation J-22 stealth fighters and continues investing heavily in loyal Wingmen programs. Pakistan is expanding its drone inventory with Chinese support. India cannot afford to rely only on traditional fighter aircraft. So, every modern conflict has demonstrated the growing importance of unmanned systems. From Ukraine to West Asia, drones have changed battlefield economics. They are cheaper than fighter aircraft, they are expendable, they reduce pilot casualties. Most importantly, they overwhelm enemy air defenses by attacking in large numbers. So, a fleet of hundreds of stealth UCAVs would give India an entirely new offensive option against heavily defended targets across contested borders. Add these three layers up: heavy stealth strikers, loyal wingmen, and swarming pods, and you get somewhere close to that 500 figure. But add them up honestly, and most of this fleet does not exist yet. But it's getting there. Ghatak needs cabinet financial clearance and years of flight testing. Warrior's first flight hasn't happened. ALFA-S is still integrating with its parent aircraft. India's own unmanned force plan, released in 2025, backs this with $15 billion over 10 years and a new production model designed to speed up manufacturing. That is real money behind a real strategy. But numbers on a roadmap and drones on a runway are two very different things. For India, this is the right ambition built at the right time, given the threats that are sitting on two of our borders. The question is whether the funding, the testing, and the factories can move fast enough to turn that ambition into an actual fleet before the timeline itself becomes the biggest threat to the plan. This is Times Access, where global stories meet India's perspective. Click on the bell icon to subscribe, because the next big global shift will have India at its center.